Hi, Larry.
Hi, Bhakti. How are you?
I'm good. So I think we're waiting on Mohamedou. We don't know where he is, but hopefully he's not having internet trouble. But welcome. And we are going to talk about a book that was just published that we have loved called The Actual True Story of Ahmed and Zarga by Mohamedou Ould Slahi with Larry Siems. So while we're waiting for him, I can start by asking you a little bit about the width part. What was the writing process of this book? Was it ready and then you sort of edited it? How did it all come together?
What a great question. I hope you can hear me. It looks like my connection's a little bit spotty, so if it is, I may have to drop off and join again with my phone. But anyway, thank you so much for doing this. So Mohamedou wrote a draft of Ahmed and Zarga when he was in Guantanamo. It was one of, I think, 5 or 6 manuscripts that he wrote besides Guantanamo Diary.
Wow.
It's one of the only one other than Guantanamo Diary that we're fortunate enough to have the version that he wrote in Guantanamo, because he, like Guantanamo Diary, had sent that to his lawyers, and they were able to get that through the privilege process and cleared for release. So they had sent me pages for Ahmed and Zarga while Mohamedou was still in prison, and it's, you know, in shape and in structure, it's very much, you know, the book that we have now. And when Mohamedou got out and we met and was talking about projects that we'd like to dive into, you know, this was the top of the list. And so essentially it was a process where, you know, Mohamedou took that material that he drafted in Guantanamo and began to sort of fill it out into a novel length. I think it was more like a story length in the Guantanamo version. And so he filled it out and he would send me pages, and I would generally just ask questions, you know, and say, this is beautiful, and, you know, more of this, or, you know, what's happening here? I don't understand this. Or, and we had a conversation that went on for about, I don't know, Mohamedou, how long? 4 or 5 months, maybe, where, you know, just the bread was baking, you know, then the story was rising and becoming more and more done. And we would just go back and forth. And I think we went through the whole thing from beginning to end. You know, we would go through bit by bit, and then beginning to end another 4 or 5 times, just kind of, you know, shaping and refining these things. And then finally, we had a wonderful editor at the University of Ohio Press who came in then with, you know, fresh eyes and went through again and said, you know, I don't understand this, or, you know, tell me more about this. And so we went through it again 1 or 2 more times. But it was, you know, a beautiful collaboration in some sense that was, I think, driven by and guided by, you know, just the intensity and the clarity of Mohamedou's imagination, and the beautiful, timeless kind of mythic space in which the story existed. I'm a poet by training. I studied classical literature at the university, and, you know, and sort of the Homeric oral tradition has always been, you know, extremely fascinating to me. And this book, from the first time I read the manuscript, you know, clearly located itself in kind of this space of timeless storytelling and oral storytelling. And so, you know, it just sort of that, and like I say, Mohamedou's vision of the story just kind of guided the way the process happened.
Yeah, thank you. Mohamedou, welcome. Sorry, we started without you because we were waiting for you to settle in. Congratulations on this fantastic book that it's being launched, live streamed, all over on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Please follow at Project Polis at the Polis Project if you want to watch this show. This is your second published work, and I had started by asking Larry what it means when his name appears right on top and it says with Larry Siems, and I asked him a little bit about the process. So do you wanna also comment a little bit on that? How is it to work with? How is it to work together? What does it mean to kind of co-write a book? I know for a fact that Larry probably doesn't know as much about camels and so on, or the desert. So I'm certain that it's entirely your imagination. But we were curious. People were curious how this book was written, and why what's the the double credit.
Bhakti, thank you for having us, and it feels so good to have a professional writer and professional poet writing my book, and I take credit. And it's I don't really know, like I felt a little bit uneasy because like you have like to have really, I think both our names needs to be the same way written, on the book. And I never told Larry this, but I always felt that way. And so I just want to tell you how this is done. So, I love to write, but I really need there is always this problem that without formal training, there are very I guess rookie mistake that, I make. I didn't know when to end the paragraph, when to start the paragraph. And I don't think that writer on nights or any other, of the Islamic and Andalusian writer knew when to start. They just know when the story starts and when it ends. That's all they know. And anything else is very much arbitrary, And but now we have the science of writing that I know nothing about. And then I always likened myself to a driver who is bad. First is bad driver, and then they don't know where they're going. So they just keep driving. And it's like Larry is the GPS, without guiding me through. And it's also the talking, the good guy talking in my head. And we had some back and forth sometime. And sometime, most of the time, we both see the point of Larry and then we incorporate it. Some very few times I said no, because Larry has also he's trained as a journalist, and journalists wants to know very clearly. They want to know what went on. But in my mind, a story, you need to leave some mystery, because this is not a piece of news. And I want that mystery to remain, because in my mind, we don't need to have answer for everything.
Okay.
Some kind of mystery.
Right. Yeah, I mean, would have been probably very different in terms of the memoir, which was a kind of finished product, and then this one, which is more of a, giving him bits and pieces of stuff as it gets formed. What about sort of, how did you, Larry, kind of work through, things like passages from the Quran? Was that something you all worked on together, or was it entirely Mohamedou? Or what were there arguments about including certain things, deleting certain things? Were there fights? Good fights?
I don't remember any fights at all. And I think, first of all, I just want to react a little bit to what Mohamedou said. I think for knowing what they're doing, and for there being some secrets of the craft. I always think of, I think E.L. Doctorow described writing a novel.
I think we lost you for a second there. Larry? Mohamedou, can you hear him? No. Oh, there you're back.
I will try to switch networks.
Okay. We can hear you now. So you
can you hear me now? I was saying, E.L. Doctorow described writing as driving at night in the fog. Writing a novel is like driving at night in the fog. And he said, you can only see as far as your headlights, you know, but somehow you get to where you're going in the end. You know, you don't know where you're going. You can just see that far, but you make it that next distance and that next distance, and then you're home. So, you know, it's you know, I think writers are always, you know, are always unsure of what the rules are and where the road is and everything. I think, you know, I would say that the big thing that I've learned in working with both Guantánamo Diary and Ahmed and Zarga is that editors are almost always wrong. And, you know, and so I think any writer benefits from somebody who asks questions, you know, who says, oh, I want to hear more about this. This is interesting. You know, I really, this really captures my imagination. That's very helpful to a writer. But I think, I know in Guantánamo Diary, I spent about 6 months, you know, working because I couldn't speak with Mohamedou then. So trying to edit the manuscript, I spent about 6 months editing the manuscript and then about 3 months unediting things that I had done that weren't necessary, you know, learning more and more how, as Mohamedou says, you know, where to leave the mystery, where to, you know, where the spaces are, where the intention, how intentional that is, how intentional, you know, how complicated the structure that Mohamedou, who pretends he doesn't know anything about writing.
Hey, Larry has terrible connection.
Describes a scene.
Okay. Thanks so much. Mohamedou, do you want to, do you have any comment for Larry before he leaves us? I had asked him to join us for 10 or 15 minutes, and then you and I have a chat.
It's amazing because I never in my life heard of this, you know, parallel between driving in the fog and what I told him. I never heard of that, you know? And it's amazing that me and that writer had the same feeling. And where are you, Bhakti?
We lost Bhakti. Oh,
we
no.
lost Bhakti. No, it's just amazing. I just want to say it's how amazing it was that I never heard of this. We have a saying in Arabic. We say you know, because we have some Arab poems that where the verse, it's the exact same as the verse that was said before it, but the poet never heard of that other poet.
Yeah.
And we say poet follows poet like a horse hoof. And yeah. So, and Bhakti, you're back. I just want to say how much I appreciate Larry. I think having Larry in this world makes this world a better place. That's what I think.
That's lovely. Thanks so much, Larry.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thanks for joining us.
Wonderful. Have a great conversation. Bye.
Yeah.
You too.
All right, Mohamedou. Now I have you with some very difficult questions. No, I'm just joking. Not at all. So I just wanted to kind of trace back the beginning of this book a little bit, try to understand your personality as a writer, so your education and your work is, I think it's electrical engineering, right? That's what you went to, that's what you studied. And then thanks, right? So thanks to abhorrent circumstances, you were put on the front lines of the war on terror and held without charge in Guantanamo for 15 years. And, I think one might imagine that your memoir, Guantanamo, was a kind of, one-time literary project. You did that. You had something extremely urgent you needed to say, to get out there into the world, to expose a really terrible system. And then, but here we are, and now you have published this stunning, beautiful, captivating novel. And I have no doubt that there is more novels in you, more literary works. And I don't want to say that your entire life was determined by your time in Guantanamo, but do you think your literary persona, your writer persona came out because of that experience? Otherwise, you would have just been an engineer and we would have never read your beautiful writing.
First, Bhakti, thank you so much. This is like, just think about when you write an article or an essay, and when you're very emotional, very upset. That would be very different than when you write it and you don't know what to say, think, plotting, because, I think good, like, literary work is born out of misery and very, like, traumatic experiences. And because I think, like, we need to get to the soul. It needs to come from the soul. And we need to dig deep and peel off the layer of society. And I give example that everybody understands. Just think about writing and you are censored, and then writing when you are not censored. So there is two books in the Arab world that very known. The Al-Khubz al-Havi, Bread Without Butter. I think it was written in French or in Spanish first. It was written by a Moroccan. It's a biography, autobiography. Al-Khubz al-Havi, Bread Without Butter, and the migration, the season, migration season to the north.
Yeah.
Tayyib Saleh. You see, that's like the layer, the taboos that were mentioned that everybody could relate to are very important, because you could write a polite novel, but who is going to relate to a polite novel? And I wish I had, like, the courage of Bread Without Butter, and because it was very extreme, like it's very close to Catcher in the Rye, but Catcher in the Rye, it's fiction,
right.
But it's much more graphic than Catcher in the Rye. And in this part of the world, this is like, he had really very miserable life. He was, like, sexually assaulted, abused, and he was working in very, very bad circumstances. He lived in the street. He had no house. His father was very abusive. And so those are the kinds of circumstances. He was, like, working as slave into a Spanish family. And he is describing very normal thing that is people usually don't say about themselves. Right. So all I'm saying is that, of course, everything I saw in prison, everything I experienced, forcibly is going to be put down in my writing somehow.
Right. So could we interpret, you just joined us for the intimate book club part before, and we had a lot of people had all kinds of questions for you. And, in the kind of, as someone who's a literary critic, who writes about books, can we say that your character Ahmed in the novel is trapped in the fragility of his body? Everything is out of his control. He's in tremendous pain. He almost dies. And every chapter will begin with these very vivid nightmares, and eventually, which are indicative of the trauma and the stress he's under as he's on this journey. He can't get out. He can't get away. There are a lot of elements of horror actually in this novel, while there being extreme beauty and silence. So I think people who have read Guantanamo Diary might see this as another approach to express the violence you endured in Guantanamo. Was that something that intentionally happened, or, as you're saying, there's no way not to express that?
I think, I have a saying, very philosophical saying, subconscious a bitch.
Okay. Subconscious is a bitch. Okay.
Yes. And of course, you are smart, and you already got the point. So one time, in Jordanian prison, that was like the beginning of my nightmare, some of the most horrific nightmare. When you are in a very dark cell, no one knows where you are. If your family doesn't know where you are, you can be killed, you can be abused, you can be tortured, you can be disappeared. Under the absolute mercy of people who don't plan to, and I couldn't tell the difference between dreams and wakefulness.
Right.
The dreams were so vivid that in my dream, I when I see my family in my dream, I discuss the dream within the dream. So I remember this vivid dream when I telling my sister, this is a dream. I'm tired of those dreams, because every time I see this dream, I'm holding you. I wake up in this very horrific, dark place. She said, no. She would say, no, it's not a dream. Hold me, hold me. And I would hold her. Mm-hmm. Then in one time I woke up in the dream holding fake hands and crying. And that's how vivid the dream, because I couldn't anymore tell whether I was awake or not.
Right, right. And this is actually, people who, prison literature, which is kind of a long tradition. It's not a tradition, like a happy tradition, but there's a long canon of literature that comes out of detention in prisons. And one of the most, one of the observations that are often made is very much this idea of not knowing the difference between dream and wakefulness. And I think this story captures it really well, even though, his goals are different. Ahmed's journey is, of course, very different. And in the end, there is a sense that Ahmed does know his way. He feels he's always oriented. He knows how to survive the desert. He can communicate beautifully with the camel. So, it must have been interesting for you to be in control of this story, as opposed to the lack of control. Do you see what I'm saying?
Could you please repeat the last part again? I couldn't hear.
Yeah, sorry. No, I was saying that, part of prison literature is often about kind of not knowing the difference between wakefulness and sleep. And all of these are expressions of having no control over your circumstances, not knowing what's about to happen. But that's not the case with Ahmed. He's very smart. He understands the desert. He understands the direction. He knows how to read all the signs. he has really all the tools for survival, and he can also communicate fluently with his camel Lamesh. So, I wondered if you felt a sense of control while writing this fiction. If you felt like, now I can control the events here, that there was something like a catharsis, like a release for you, some kind of freedom in writing a book like that.
I think so. Like, when we are in traumatic situation, we start to romanticize other options of life. Bedouin life is not easy. It's very harsh. It's very very demanding, and it's a lot of work. You cannot call in sick and then leave your camel alone. There is no calling in sick. And the working hours are very, very long and very taxing. But I just we tend to say, okay, maybe if I was a Bedouin, how would it look like? I almost know the answer, but I want to, like you said, like having some control, being in the same situation, but with the exception that I'm in control.
Right. That's amazing. And I think you said somewhere that it was just so liberating to write fiction, and you just, that you enjoyed it so much that you were kind of free from reality. And I love that comment. I love that comment. I think you said it for the interview for Brittle Paper. And it makes sense. One of the other things I read in that same interview that you gave, you said, and then Larry was talking about it as well, that this was one of the manuscripts you wrote while in detention, one of the 4 manuscripts you wrote, but this is the only one you got back, whereas the others, they're kind of lost to the system. They've been, confiscated. So, so when I read it, I kept thinking about that, and I felt maybe this is a very nostalgic. This is a nostalgic story. This is a story of nostalgia, of trying to recuperate through writing this feeling of the desert, your childhood, a kind of your memories. Would I be right to say that in a way you were, staying in touch with that part of you?
Yes, absolutely. It's a nostalgia and reconnecting with my roots in a way. Even though like I enjoy like where I am, and I enjoy what civilized life is giving me, the comfort. I can sleep until 10 a.m. I don't have to wake up like 5 a.m. like as a Bedouin, and but just reconnecting like to this life and trying to appreciate that beauty, those ingredients.
Yeah. One of the things when I was reading it, that it felt to me like a comment. We talk a lot about global warming and climate change, and this book is really about the environment and the geography, and about a time where human beings were really connected to nature and to animals. It felt very idealistic, very beautiful. And I'm sure there are still communities that live like that, that are kind of untouched by, colonial modern forces and things like that. But to me, it felt like a very sharp kind of comment on how our relationship with nature and animals has been kind of destroyed, how we've been, that this is a problem. So is this something you're reminding us? Do you think that we are suffering because we are not taking seriously our connection to nature, to animals, to the kind of natural world? Is there are you offering us some criticism?
Not consciously, because I really believe in the saying of Montaigne. Je raconte je raconte, je n'enseigne pas. Je n'enseigne pas, je raconte.
Yeah.
I don't teach, I recount. And so, and we haven't been nice to the earth. That's very obvious. And we haven't like whenever there is like this modern civilization, people, you know, don't like use the resources with respect. Like it's a very big sin in Bedouin life to throw away food, you know, which you have only to do as much food as you need. And water, like with very little of water, you can do so much. You can keep your hygiene, you can eat, you can very little of water. And now we just go under the shower and just turn it off, and then you use so much water you really don't need, you know.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that, and a Bedouin would be very aware of that.
Yeah. Well, once you experience the joy of the shower, it's very hard to come back to what you're saying. But there is a feeling that there is a vision in there that's very provocative, that's very interesting. And even if you don't want to teach, I think there is a lesson, you know, that we're all learning through it. So, you know, and it feels like these kind of modern encounters are coming with a very heavy price. In the book, you know, Ahmed knows about the presence of the French. He knows, you know, that the French way has been rejected. You know, could you talk a little bit about the time that your novel is set in?
You know, I don't know exactly the time, but I know it's like, because I want to make it like timeless. But because of the ingredients of the narrative, there is no escaping time frame. So I just put it between when the colonial France took over the country until like just during the colonial time, which is like not very long. Like I don't think even it's 100 years. You know, I just would say like mid 19th century to mid 20th century. And because Mauritania was not like taken per se, it was just like, because it was a transit zone between Morocco and Senegal. And that's why it was taken. So, and it was like during this confusing time for a Bedouin. You know, they brought the cars, they start to build cities in Mauritania. It was not known as Mauritania. And it was just confusing. Even a camel, if a camel sees a car, the camel gets very confused and very irritated.
Yeah. Why is the camel blue? And then when, you know, is that a way, is that just how camels are described? Zarga is blue and very magical in the beginning, but then later when Ahmed finds her, she's not blue. Why this color?
So blue, I think, is very rare in camels, and blue is as described, you know, with just like some whiteness in the eye, and then some, you know, and then some whiteness, a little spot, white spot in the camel. So blue is not a color. It's that's how they describe it. They just say blue because of those white spots.
Right.
Including in the eye that sprinkle the camel. It's not completely white, it's not completely dark. Sprinkled with this white spot. That's the definition of blue in camel world.
Okay, that's cool. Apparently, you said the book is influenced by some things that happened to your own father, and you know that felt stressful once I read the book, because I know there's an encounter with cannibals. Are these true stories? Are they kind of folklore?
No, the story with my father was true. So, and I confirmed that story from my sister, older sister, and from my aunt.
Mm-hmm.
And but the story is a little bit exaggerated in the book. And I really don't know, looking back, I'm tempted to think that they weren't really cannibals, but he just didn't know them. And the way they looked, the way they acted, made him really very scared. And then he had to bail out. And I think he genuinely thought they were cannibals, but I don't think they were cannibals.
Okay, that's good to know, because it paints Moroccans in a very bad light if they are actually doing, if they are actually sitting around doing this in the desert. But that's interesting. But at least they were kind of interested in some brutality. You know, they were violent at least.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. We have a question here from Michael. Gitanjali, who's helping us, she can beam it up. So he says, the book ends with Ahmed in an ambivalent and a fraught space. Everyone thinks he's a hero and has his own version of his own vindication, except Ahmed, who doesn't quite feel it. Can you explain this ending? And are you writing the next chapter of this?
Yes. So you're right, Michael. Thank you for the question, Michael, my good friend and brother. Oh, why people dissect everything? Why don't just read it and enjoy it?
It's fun to dissect. That's my job.
So we say, in Mauritania, we have a saying: if you criticize a poem, why don't you make your own poem? And but the answer of poem critique in Mauritania, I am criticizing your poem and I'm not offering anything instead. And so I think, like Michael, you used to report about war. And when you come back, your family and people who love you, they see you as a hero, because what you went through is very traumatic. It's very harsh. But you said that's normal in your head, because, you need to be away from something in order to judge it. Ahmed couldn't be away, so you need to use a mirror to see your face. You cannot see your face. So Ahmed needs the mirror, and the mirror showed him something he didn't, that was not his perception about himself. And I think this happens very often to people.
Yeah. Okay. Until we get more questions, I have more questions. We have a little more time. This is also a story of faith in a way. Ahmed is very very true to his God. He prays. He's a real believer, and he kind of draws all his kind of intelligence from that place, and that's what allows him to survive. Can you talk a little bit about faith, about religion, and your relationship to this, and what you're trying to say through Ahmed about faith?
I think that faith and belief are as unique to everyone as their own DNA. Everyone is a walking religion. Every single person, and every single person. When I say religion, I mean not in the traditional way, but I mean what people refer to as system of belief. Because let's say, like the nature of God, everyone understands the nature of God in his or her own way. And Ahmed is the embodiment of so many religions, so many beliefs that lived in this environment, and every belief, every system left its own DNA print. And you can see that. You can see ingredient of Islam, ingredient of animism, you can see ingredient of he's very content in his own skin. He doesn't see any contradiction in his beliefs, and he also regards his belief as the very true belief that's beyond approach, beyond discussion or anything, just like anyone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, to me, this was a very unique book. It reminds me of certain other books. It reminds me of this book from Guinea by Camel, which is called, An African Child or something like that. And it was a different time, a rural time, where a little boy is growing up before colonial times come and everything changes and there are cities and so on. But, I know that you don't have the typical writer's trajectory, where you decided you want to be a writer and then you read certain books and you went to certain classes. But I still know that you have a wide range of influences to your writing, to your thinking. So books, films, what comes to mind as your inspiration for this book?
My biggest inspiration, one of my biggest inspiration was 1001 Night. Like a classic. I love it.
Yep.
And, also my father was very big inspiration to me, because my father died very upset and very confused because he lost his camel. He had to live through the loss of his camel herd and the loss of his livelihood and his way of life. He was the last generation of my forefather who who was to abandon his lifestyle, and he didn't like it.
Wow. Any other books coming to mind? We have some intruders here.
Hi, intruder. And
so kind of go ahead.
Yeah, I really want to finish this sequel to Guantánamo Bay, and you saw one story, the guard duty, that was published in Evergreen.
Yeah.
And so that is part of some sequel to Guantánamo Bay, because many people ask me what happened after you finish the writing of Guantánamo Bay. And I also want to finish the other works. Ahmed in Germany, highlighting
the same Ahmed will be in Germany?
Just Ahmed, no, just a different
Ahmed. Okay, an Ahmed. All right.
Like and then I'm doing some theater work, hopefully, projects in Europe.
Okay.
And I could travel. And you will always hear from me. I will always crush the party of writers.
That's good. And then what about film? Theater, you're saying, do you feel an interest after your book was made into a film? Do you feel an interest in writing screenplay or, maybe shooting a film yourself?
I mean, so Ahmed and Zarga will be adapted to a movie, to a screenplay. So.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
Yeah. Yes, and I'm very happy, very excited about it. I will be seeing so many camels, so many dunes.
Yeah.
Really good.
Well, it'll be beautiful, without a doubt. This is a plan, or this is something that's happening for sure?
It is happening.
Okay. That's great. That's excellent.
I will let you know more.
Mm-hmm. And then the next book you're working on is a second book that is what happened after Guantanamo?
Yes.
Okay.
No, not after Guantanamo, including after Guantanamo.
Okay.
Yes, I finished Guantanamo Diary.
Okay, that's great. Before I was asking you what, I guess I was asking you what other books other than Sherazade and stuff like that you were, 1001 Nights that were influencing you. And then I also want to, I also want to ask you about, if there is a vibrant kind of Mauritanian literature, is it primarily oral, or are there a lot of writers, and what languages are they writing in? Anything you can tell us about the literary scene in Mauritania?
Yes, so to your knowledge, Mauritania is nicknamed the land of a million poets.
Wow.
And Mauritania was only 1 million people.
Mm-hmm.
Mauritania now is about 4 million, the population of 4 million. So Mauritania was named the country of 1 million poets. And mostly, you're right, mostly it's like oral. People just like to, we don't say we write a poem, we say a poem.
Mm-hmm.
The very language of it already reveals. And it's very much vibrant. Unfortunately, people don't write a lot. I don't know, too lazy. And I'm so afraid that it comes a point where we lose so much of the treasure, that because old people die and the younger generation not rely on memory as the old generation did, because you don't rely on memory because you have a smartphone, a smartphone remembers everything for you.
I know. So before, when we started first with Larry, because you were running a few minutes late, but we had planned on you reading a passage from the book. Do you still have the book in front of you? Would you like to read?
Yes.
Would you like to end our conversation by reading?
Yes.
Okay.
The best way to fight evil spirits is to deprive them of the kind of environment where they thrive. Sleepwalking or sleep riding makes a man vulnerable to his enemy's attack. So Ahmed decided to call it a night. Looking at the constellation, located the pole star and Dub al-Kabir, the big bear. They indicated it was around 3 hours until morning prayer time. Enough to give him a decent rest. Ahmed was looking for anything in his vast and wide desert that could be called a campsite. It is next to impossible to find a shelter in the middle of nowhere, and that was where he was. He spotted a shrub, a titanic, standing majestically on the side of a smooth dune. Its long, bare roots had been exposed by the sustained wind, but it had not been filled. Ahmed had used this titanic for many things. Camels eat the smooth, leafless twig, which both fatten them and decrease their milk. Ahmed himself would eat the branches, fly to pure urine in smallpox, and ground the seeds and mix them with oil to use as an eye lotion. Beside the small titanic, Ahmed found a home for the night. He didn't remove the saddle because he didn't plan to stay longer than necessary. He tied Lamish 4 legs together to make sure he would not go too far. The animal wanted to eat. Since he hadn't had a chance during the long ride that day and needed a late night meal to fuel up for the journey in the morning. And I trusted Amish fully, but a lone camel can wander loot the sand of the camel urine, which they can smell as far as a 2 days ride away. Tying his camel's feet was not something Ahmed took lightly, but it was necessary. He wrapped the other end of the camel's tether around the top of the saddle, leaving it loose enough for the animal to move his neck freely and get to the hard-to-reach spots on the territory. Thank you so much for reading my book.
Hi, I'm still here.
Yes.
Thanks, Mohamedou. That was lovely. Thank you so much. We should have started with it, which would have put us in the mood, but now it'll put people in the mood to buy the book and see what happens in the actual true story of Ahmed and Zarga. Thank you for joining us today, and congratulations on this fantastic book. Cheers. I just have water. Is that tea? I don't know what you're drinking. And hopefully hopefully everyone can do this together in a party somewhere, somehow. But for now,
thank you so much. Love you guys.
Thanks so much. You can buy the book on Ohio University Press, and the actual true story of Ahmed and Zarga has recently been published. So go and get it. Thanks so much.